So we're back at the Caribou Public Library for our chapter book story time. Thank you for joining us today as we continue to read Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. We are going to be reading chapters 19 and 20 today. If you'll remember, at the end of chapter 18, he had just gotten back from a hard run for the doctor, saved his mistress's life, but is now very sick. Chapter 19, called Only Ignorance. Here's our picture. I do not know how long I was ill. Mr. Bond, the horse doctor, came every day. One day he bled me. John held up a pail for the blood. I felt very faint after it, and I thought I should die. I believe they all thought so too. Ginger and Merrylegs had been moved into the other stable, so that I might be quiet, for the fever made me very quick of hearing. Any little noise seemed quite loud, and I could tell everyone's footstep going to and from the house. I knew all that was going on. One night, John had to give me a draught. Thomas Green came in to help him. After I had taken it and John had made me as comfortable as he could, he said he should stay half an hour to see how the medicine settled. Thomas said he would stay with him. So they went and sat down on a bench that had been brought into Merrylegs' stall and put down the lantern at their feet, that I might not be disturbed with the light. For a while, both men sat silent, and then Tom Green said in a low voice, "I wish, John, that you'd say a bit of a kind word to Joe. The boy is quite broken-hearted. He can't eat his meals, and he can't smile. He says he knows it was all his fault, though he is sure he did the best he knew. And he says if Beauty dies, no one will ever speak to him again. It goes to my heart to hear him. I think you might give him just a word. He's not a bad boy." After a short pause, John said slowly, "You must not be too hard upon me, Tom. I know he meant no harm. I never said he did. I know he's not a bad boy, but you see, I am sore myself. That horse is the pride of my heart, to say nothing of him being such a favorite with my master and mistress. And to think that his life may be flung away in this manner is more than I can bear. But if you think I'm hard on the boy, I will try to give him a good word tomorrow. That is, I mean if Beauty is better." "Well, John, thank you. I knew you would not wish to be too hard, and I'm glad that you see it was only ignorance." John's voice almost startled me as he answered, "Only ignorance? Only ignorance? How can you talk about only ignorance? Do you know that it is the worst thing in the world next to wickedness, and which does the most mischief, heaven only knows? If people can say, 'Oh, I did not know, I did not mean any harm,' they think it's all right. I suppose Martha Mulwash did not mean to kill that baby when she dosed it with Dalby and soothing syrups, but she did kill it, and was tried for manslaughter." "And served her right, too," said Tom. "A woman should not undertake to nurse a tender little child without knowing what is good and what is bad for it." "Bill Starkey," continued John, "did not mean to frighten his brother into fits when he dressed up like a ghost and ran after him in the moonlight. But he did, and that bright, handsome little fellow that might have been the pride of any mother's heart is just no better than an idiot, and never will be, if he lives to be 80 years old. You were a good deal cut up yourself, Tom, 2 weeks ago, when those young ladies left your hothouse door open, with a frosty east wind blowing right in. You said it killed a good many of your plants." "A good many. There was not one of the tender cuttings that was not nipped off. I shall have to strike all over again, and the worst of it is that I don't know where to go to get fresh ones. I was nearly mad when I came in and saw what was done." "And yet," said John, "I am sure the young ladies did not mean it. It was only ignorance." I heard no more of the conversation, for the medicine did well and set me to sleep, and in the morning I felt much better, but I often thought of John's words when I came to know more of the world. Chapter 20, Joe Green. Here he is writing. Joe Green went on very well. He learned quickly, and was so attentive and careful that John began to trust him in many things. But as I've said, he was small of his age, and it was seldom that he was allowed to exercise either Ginger or me. But it so happened one morning that John was out with Justice in the luggage cart, and the master wanted a note to be taken immediately to a gentleman's house, about 3 miles distant, and he sent his orders for Joe to saddle me and to take it, addressing the caution that he was to ride carefully. The note was delivered, and we were quietly returning until we came to the brick field. Here we saw a cart heavily laden with bricks. The wheels had stuck fast in the stiff mud of some deep ruts, and the carter was shouting and flogging the 2 horses unmercifully. Joe pulled up. It was a sad sight. There were the 2 horses straining and struggling with all their might to drag the cart out, but they could not move it. The sweat streamed from their legs and flanks, and the sides heaved, and every muscle was strained, while the man, fiercely pulling at the head of the 4-horse, swore and lashed out most brutally. Here they come. You see that picture? So here's Joe on Black Beauty, and the man pulling with the horses and the cart of bricks that's stuck in the mud. Hold hard, said Joe. Don't go on flogging the horses like that. The wheels are so stuck that they cannot move the cart. The man took no heed, but went on lashing. Stop, pray stop, said Joe. I'll help you to lighten the cart. They can't move it now. Mind your own business, you impudent young rascal, and I'll mind mine. The man was in a towering passion, and the worse for drink, and laid on the whip again. Joe turned my head, and the last moment we were going at a round gallop toward the house of the brickmaster. I cannot say if John would have approved of our pace, but Joe and I were both of one mind, and so angry that we could not have gone slower. The house stood close by the roadside. Joe knocked at the door and shouted, "Hello, is Mr. Clay at home?" The door was opened, and Mr. Clay himself came out. "Hello, young man, you seem in a hurry. Any orders from the squire this morning?" "No, Mr. Clay, but there's a fellow in your brickyard flogging 2 horses to death. I told him to stop, and he wouldn't. I said I'd help him to lighten the cart, and he wouldn't. So I've come to tell you. Pray, sir, go." Joe's voice shook with excitement. "Thank ye, my lad," said the man, running in for his hat, and then pausing for a moment. "Will you give evidence of what you saw if I should bring the fellow up here before the magistrate?" "That I will," said Joe, "and glad to." The man was gone, and we were on our way home at a smart trot. "Why, what's the matter with you, Joe? You look angry all over," said John, as the boy flung himself from the saddle. "I am angry all over, I can tell you," said the boy, and then, in hurried, excited words, he told all that had happened. Joe was usually such a quiet, gentle little fellow that it was wonderful to see him so roused. "Right, Joe, you did right, my boy, whether the fellow gets a summons or not. Many folks would have ridden by and said 'twas not their business to interfere. Now, I say, with that cruelty and oppression, it is everybody's business to interfere when they see it. You did right, my boy." Joe was quite calm by this time and proud that John had approved of him, and he cleaned out my feet and rubbed me down with a firmer hand than usual. They were just going home to dinner when the footman came down to the stable to say that Joe was wanted directly in master's private room. There was a man brought up for ill-using horses, and Joe's evidence was wanted. Joe flushed up to his forehead, and his eyes sparkled. "They shall have it," said he. "Put yourself a bit straight," said John. Joe gave a pull at his necktie and a twitch at his jacket, and was off in a moment. Our master being one of the county magistrates, cases were often brought to him to settle, or say what should be done. In the stable we heard no more for some time, as it was the men's dinner hour, but when Joe came into the stable, I saw that he was in high spirits. He gave me a good-natured slap and said, "We won't see such things done, will we, old fellow?" We heard afterwards that he had given his evidence so clearly that the horses were in such an exhausted state, bearing marks of such brutal usage, that the carter was committed to take his trial and might possibly be sentenced to 2 or 3 months in prison. It was wonderful what a change had come over Joe. John laughed, and he said he had grown an inch taller in that week, and I believe he had. He was just as kind and gentle as before, but there was more purpose and determination in all that he did, as if he had jumped all at once from a boy into a man. Well, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed our chapters of Black Beauty, and we'll see you next time. Until then.